When a man with a heart of gold falls for a woman with secrets darker than night, tragedy is never far behind. Darius Cole, a self-made black billionaire known for his generosity, believed he had finally found love in Vanessa, a charming woman who made him feel human again. But behind her perfect smile was a plan. A plan built on greed, envy, and revenge. To the world, she was his fiancée. To herself, she was his undoing. Yet fate has a strange sense of justice, because the night she thought she had destroyed him forever was the night her own truth began to unravel. Darius Cole was not born into wealth. He built it from the dust of broken dreams. Born in the outskirts of Atlanta, in a one-room house with a tin roof and a leaky ceiling, he grew up watching his mother juggle 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. His father had disappeared when Darius was 6, leaving behind nothing but a few photos and a list of unpaid debts. But pain for Darius became a strange kind of fuel. He spent nights studying under flickering streetlights, working in repair shops, and teaching himself coding from discarded library books. At 22, he launched a small tech startup out of his friend's garage, a company that would eventually become Cole Innovations, a billion-dollar empire specializing in smart infrastructure for African cities. By 35, he was on the cover of Forbes, yet he never let fame stain his humility. He still visited his old neighborhood every Christmas, handing out food parcels and funding scholarships for kids who reminded him of his younger self. People called him the billionaire with a soul. But even the kindest hearts have blind spots. And his was love. The meeting Vanessa entered his life on a rainy Tuesday. He had been attending a charity gala in Manhattan, one organized to raise funds for educational technology in underprivileged schools. Darius arrived late, his usual preference. He disliked attention. Cameras loved him, and he hated being loved by them. As he took a seat at the edge of the hall, he noticed her. A woman in a sleek black gown stood near the balcony, laughing softly at something one of the guests had said. She was magnetic. There was something calculated yet effortless about her, as though every movement, every smile was choreographed, but invisible to the naked eye. When their eyes met, Vanessa's smile lingered just a heartbeat too long. Later, he would remember that smile as the moment everything began to unravel. Vanessa Devereaux came from a different world, or so she claimed. A struggling interior designer, she said she'd grown up in New Orleans, raised by her grandmother after her parents died in an accident. Darius found her warmth disarming, her laughter unguarded, her interest in his work refreshingly genuine. For a man surrounded by opportunists and investors, she seemed like an oasis. Within weeks, she was by his side at every public event. Within months, she was living in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. His friends noticed her before he truly did. "Darius," one of them warned, "she's too perfect. Nobody that polished comes without an angle." But Darius, with that gentle faith he wore like armor, just smiled. "Not everyone wants something, Marcus. Some people just want to be seen." Vanessa saw him all right, but not the way he thought. The hidden motive behind the soft smiles and romantic whispers, Vanessa had her own history, one stitched together by resentment. Years before she met Darius, her father had been a contractor who worked for one of Cole Innovations' subsidiary projects in Detroit. A minor accident on site had left him crippled, and when the company's insurance failed to pay out enough for his treatment, he died bitter and penniless. Vanessa grew up with that bitterness. To her, Darius Cole wasn't a man. He was a symbol of everything her family had lost. When she learned about him through an old news article, an idea began to form. A cruel, patient plan. She would enter his life, earn his trust, and slowly strip away everything he cared about. His company, his peace, his pride. It wasn't just revenge. It was retribution disguised as romance. The seduction of kindness, Darius was a creature of habit. He woke early, read scriptures with his morning coffee, and always paused to watch the sunrise. Vanessa began to mirror these habits. Cooking, his breakfast, sharing in his reflections, pretending to admire the same poets he quoted. He believed it was fate. She believed it was strategy. She learned his passwords by watching his reflection in the glass wall of their living room. She listened to his calls, memorized the voices of his business partners, and began slowly transferring small amounts of stock under a trust fund she created in her own name. It was perfect. He never suspected a thing. Yet something unexpected began to happen. The longer she stayed with him, the more cracks began to appear in her armor. Darius wasn't like the powerful men she had known before, arrogant, entitled, cruel. He treated everyone, from the janitor to the board chairman, with the same respect. One evening, when he came home from a long day at work, she found him sitting on the balcony, feeding a stray cat. He looked up and smiled at her, tired but gentle. "Come sit," he said. "You look like you've been running from something." She froze. For the first time in her life, someone saw through her, and it terrified her. The guilt weeks passed, and guilt began to eat at her. She would lie awake, beside him at night, staring at the ceiling, the weight of his trust pressing against her chest. He would mumble her name in his sleep, sometimes whispering, "Don't ever leave." And yet, every morning, she continued her charade, stealing signatures, moving funds, setting traps. The duality tore her apart. The woman she pretended to be, the loving fiancée, and the woman she truly was, the avenger, began to blur. She told herself it was too late to stop, but in truth, she was afraid of who she was becoming. One night she stumbled upon an old photo album Darius kept locked away. It was filled with images of his mother, a woman with the same kind eyes as his. On the last page was a handwritten note. "Son, when you finally make it, promise me you'll never let success make you cruel." Vanessa sat there for hours, clutching that album, tears blurring the words. For the first time since her father's death, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, shame. But fate doesn't forgive easily. The trap she had set was already in motion. Darius had always been a man of precision. Every number, every move, every decision in his life had meaning. But love was different. Love had made him blind to patterns, deaf to inconsistencies, and numb to intuition. Vanessa knew that. She played the part perfectly. Morning smiles, evening hugs, and the soft kind of laughter that sounded like sincerity. But what Darius didn't see were the late-night phone calls behind closed doors, the coded messages she deleted every morning, and the man named Ethan, who was waiting for her to pull off the biggest scam of her life. The beginning of the betrayal, it started small enough to slip under Darius's radar. Vanessa began convincing him to invest in a community housing project she claimed would benefit struggling single mothers in Detroit, a cause close to his heart. Darius, who had built his wealth on real estate, loved the idea. He nodded thoughtfully as Vanessa spread blueprints across the marble kitchen island. "These homes could change lives," she said softly, touching his hand. He smiled. Her words filled him with pride. "Let's make it happen." Within days, $3 million was transferred to a holding company under Vanessa's control. On paper, it looked legitimate. Contracts, deeds, invoices, all real, except for the names that didn't exist and the accounts that led straight to offshore shells. Darius's innocence. Despite his power and money, Darius still believed in the goodness of people. He had been raised by a mother who taught him that love and generosity were the highest virtues. He gave without asking. He trusted without suspicion. And Vanessa, she weaponized that trust like an artist painting deception. Whenever doubts crept into his mind, she would drown them in affection. A surprise dinner, a kiss in the hallway, a soft confession whispered in the dark. "I've never loved anyone like I love you." And he would believe it, every single time. Vanessa's guilt but lies are heavy. And guilt, heavier still. One night, as Darius slept beside her, she stared at the ceiling, haunted by his kindness. He had built scholarships for black students, funded hospitals in his hometown, and even paid off the mortgages of his employees without ever taking credit. And here she was, stealing from him. She rolled over and studied his face in the moonlight. Peaceful, trusting, unguarded. For a brief second, she almost broke. Almost. But then she thought of Ethan, the man who had drawn her into this scheme. He had promised her a way out of debt, a new life, and a fortune beyond her imagination. "You just have to play the part," he'd said. "You're good at that." So she stayed silent and let the guilt dissolve into resolve. The proposal. When Darius proposed, Vanessa hadn't expected it. It was during a charity event, under the golden lights of a ballroom filled with laughter and applause. He went down on one knee, tears in his eyes, the world watching. Vanessa froze. For a split second, she saw herself in a mirror, not as the con artist, but as a woman he truly loved. The audience gasped as she whispered, "Yes." Cameras flashed. The news spread overnight. Black billionaire Darius Cole engaged to Vanessa Myers. But that single word, "yes," sealed her in a prison of her own lies. Because now, she wasn't just stealing from him. She was pretending to be his future. The second mistake, a month later, Darius introduced her to his late mother's foundation. It was the heart of everything he stood for, a place where he mentored young black entrepreneurs, offering them opportunities he never had growing up. That day, he brought Vanessa to meet the board, a mix of old friends, mentors, and business partners who had stood by him since his early days. Vanessa smiled, spoke eloquently, and charmed everyone. Except one. Mrs. Evelyn Thomas, a sharp, retired lawyer who had known Darius since he was a boy. After the meeting, Evelyn pulled him aside. "She's beautiful," she said carefully. "But there's something off." "Watch your accounts, Darius." He laughed it off, but her words lingered. That night, for the first time, Darius checked one of his minor investment accounts and found unusual activity. Transfers, emails, documents he didn't recognize. He brought it up casually to Vanessa over dinner. "Oh, that?" she said smoothly. "I was helping your team organize some reports for the new project. You told me to take initiative, remember?" He smiled faintly, ashamed for doubting her. But as she reached across the table to hold his hand, a small drop of sweat trickled down her temple, and he noticed. The storm bruise. As their wedding approached, cracks deepened. Vanessa's phone rang more often, always at strange hours. She began traveling frequently, claiming it was for project meetings. Darius started keeping quiet tabs on her, discreetly asking his assistant, Marcus, to verify some company names she'd mentioned. Days later, Marcus returned with a grim expression. "Sir, those firms don't exist. Their tax numbers are fake." Darius froze. He reread the documents, recognizing her signature beside his. He didn't know what to feel. Betrayal, disbelief, heartbreak. He didn't confront her right away. Instead, he watched her, the way she smiled, the way she spoke, and how, when she thought no one was looking, her eyes darted nervously toward her phone. Vanessa's fear. Ethan's pressure intensified. He called her every night, demanding updates. "Transfer the next batch. He's rich. He won't even notice." "I can't," she whispered one night. "He's starting to suspect." "Then finish it fast," Ethan hissed. "Before he finishes you." Her hands shook as she ended the call. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control. She was a pawn, trapped between a man who loved her and one who would destroy her. A suspicious gift. The next day, Darius surprised her with a gift, a delicate gold bracelet. "It's my mother's," he said softly. "She wore it on her wedding day. Now it's yours." Vanessa's throat tightened. The bracelet gleamed under the light, elegant, simple, priceless. She fastened it on her wrist, unaware that Darius had hidden a tiny tracking chip inside. The next week, when she claimed she was flying to New York for a charity event, Darius's security system tracked her location, not to New York, but to a private estate in Miami. Ethan's estate. That night Darius didn't sleep. The truth he knew would break him, but lies. They already had. Darius Cole had built empires from ashes, real estate from ruins, success from struggle. But nothing could have prepared him for this. Not betrayal, not by her. He sat alone in his study, the glow of his laptop reflecting off his tired eyes. The tracking log was clear. Vanessa had spent the last 3 days at a Miami mansion owned by Ethan Garrison, a name Darius hadn't heard in nearly a decade. But he remembered. Ethan had once been a business rival, a failed developer who lost everything after Darius exposed his corruption in a public audit. Now it all made sense. Vanessa wasn't random. She was a weapon. The realization Darius's chest tightened. He scrolled through photos his security team had gathered. Vanessa stepping out of Ethan's car, holding documents, laughing. Each image stabbed him with disbelief. He had loved her, completely. And she had smiled at him with another man's plan in her heart. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, a single thought consuming him. Why didn't I see it? But heartbreak is blinding, and Darius had loved too hard, too honestly. Still, one thing about Darius Cole never changed. When he was broken, he built. When he was betrayed, he planned. The calm before the storm, he didn't confront her immediately. He needed time, not to hurt her, but to understand her. When Vanessa returned 3 days later, she walked into the mansion like nothing had happened. "New York was amazing," she said, hugging him. Darius smiled faintly, pretending to believe her. He watched her move around the kitchen, casual, confident, her lies blending perfectly with routine. But every word she spoke was another brick in the wall she was building between them. "I missed you," she said. He smiled. "I missed you too." And in that moment, he decided, if she wanted to play a role, he'd let her finish the act. A quiet investigation. Over the next 2 weeks, Darius launched a secret investigation. He traced every financial move Vanessa had made since they met. Every transfer, every company, every shell. The deeper he went, the darker it got. Millions had been siphoned away, all cleverly hidden through offshore accounts connected to Ethan's network. But Darius wasn't just uncovering money trails. He was uncovering motives. Vanessa's early life, he learned, had been marked by poverty and exploitation. Her parents had lost their home in a predatory housing deal, one tied, ironically, to Ethan's company. When Darius's audit exposed Ethan, it indirectly destroyed the only man who had ever helped Vanessa's family financially. So now, years later, Ethan had come back, through her, revenge wearing lipstick. The trapped Darius began planning a countermove, not through rage, but through elegance. He decided to hold a massive gala, publicly celebrating their upcoming wedding and a new joint venture in philanthropy. He played his part, charming, proud, adoring. Vanessa played hers, flawless, radiant, and dangerous, but behind the glamour, Darius had hidden a truth. Every contract she signed that night, every agreement she forwarded, every account she used was being traced. His tech team monitored her moves live, building evidence that would expose not only her but Ethan's entire operation. Still, the hardest part wasn't the planning. It was pretending he didn't care. Because every night, when she curled up beside him and whispered, "I love you," he wanted to believe her again. But lies had become her lullaby. The breaking point. The night before the gala, Vanessa stood by the window, staring at the city lights. Darius walked up behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've been quiet lately," he said softly. "Just nervous," she replied. "Big night tomorrow," he smiled faintly. "You'll be perfect." But when he walked away, she exhaled shakily, because Ethan's call had come just hours earlier. "Tomorrow's the day," he had said coldly. "After the gala, transfer everything. Delete your tracks, then vanish." Vanessa's chest felt tight. She looked at Darius's reflection in the glass, his warmth, his kindness, and for the first time she felt disgusted with herself. She tried to rationalize it. He's rich. He'll recover. "I'm just taking what life owes me." But deep down she knew she wasn't stealing money. She was stealing the only man who ever saw her as more than her past. The gala, the Langford Hall, glittered with gold that night, chandeliers blazing, laughter echoing, photographers capturing every smile. Darius stood at the top of the staircase, hand in hand with Vanessa, welcoming guests from across the world. Every eye was on them, the perfect couple. But beneath the charm, two storms were brewing. Darius's team monitored live feeds in a hidden control room. Every keystroke Vanessa made, every email, every transfer was being recorded. Vanessa, meanwhile, carried a tiny flash drive hidden in her clutch, the final piece Ethan needed to access Darius's accounts. When Darius excused himself to greet investors, she slipped into the side hallway, found an empty office, and plugged in the drive. Her hands trembled as she watched the progress bar move. 32%. 67%. 94%. Then the screen froze. The words appeared in red. Access blocked. Security alert. Before she could react, the lights flickered. Music stopped. Gasps echoed. Then Darius's voice filled the room, calm, commanding, devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share a story about love, trust, and betrayal. The reveal. Vanessa froze in the hallway, heart pounding. She could hear him through the speakers, every word stabbing like a blade. A man once gave everything to a woman, his trust, his fortune, his heart. But she had other plans. She thought she could destroy him, but she forgot. Truth has a way of finding its voice. Security cameras flickered on screens across the ballroom. Footage of Vanessa meeting Ethan. Transferring money, smiling guests gasped. Phones came out, and Vanessa dropped to her knees. Vanessa Myers, Darius continued, you didn't just steal from me. You stole from every child this foundation could have helped. You stole from the world you pretended to care about. Tears filled her eyes. He stepped out of the spotlight, his voice breaking just slightly. But the hardest part was that I still wanted to forgive you. The crowd fell silent. The aftermath security led Vanessa out. No handcuffs, just silence. Ethan was arrested the next morning, his network dismantled. Darius never spoke publicly about her again. He quietly restructured his company, redirecting the recovered funds into programs for young women escaping manipulation and financial abuse. And somewhere in a quiet prison library months later, Vanessa received a letter. It wasn't from Darius, but from his foundation. You once said you wanted to change your life. We're offering you a chance to learn, to rebuild. Every tree deserves another spring, she cried. Not from guilt, but from a strange sense of mercy she didn't deserve. The night the masks finally fell. The ballroom shimmered under the golden chandeliers. Violins played softly. Champagne glasses clinked, and cameras flashed as the guests of the year's most anticipated gala gathered around Darius Cole and his fiancée. Vanessa Myers. Every detail was perfect. The silver centerpieces, the white orchids, the crystal ice sculpture bearing their initials. But beneath the surface of that beauty, a storm brewed silently, one that no one could see coming. Vanessa stood near the edge of the stage, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she smiled for the photographers. Her heart pounded, but not from excitement, from dread. In her clutch was a small flash drive. On it, access codes, account keys, and project files that could destroy Darius's empire if they landed in the wrong hands. And they would, in less than an hour. She looked toward the crowd and saw Darius laughing with his investors. His face, full of warmth, pride, and trust, made her chest ache. He believed in her. Still, he loved her so deeply that sometimes it felt unbearable. And tonight, she was supposed to betray him. The dance before the phallus. The music changed. Darius reached for her hand. May I have this dance? He asked softly. Her lips quivered. Always. They moved across the floor with effortless grace, two souls perfectly synchronized. The illusion of love painted in motion. But while the world saw elegance, inside Vanessa's mind, chaos raged. She could feel Ethan's text vibrating in her purse. Do it now. Transfer everything. Walk away before midnight, she wanted to scream. to run, to undo every lie she had ever told. But she had crossed too many lines already. She thought of her childhood, of her mother crying as their home was taken, of the nights they slept hungry because of a deal gone wrong. That deal was connected to Darius's company. At least, that's what Ethan had told her years ago. He had fed her bitterness. Trained her in charm, turned her into a weapon. Now she was standing in front of the man she was supposed to destroy. And she didn't know who she was anymore. The hidden room, after the dance, Darius excused himself to greet sponsors. Vanessa slipped quietly away, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. Her pulse thundered as she reached a locked side office, one of Darius's private rooms. She typed in the access code Ethan had given her. It worked. Inside, the room was dim, filled with computer screens, files, and a glowing safe built into the wall. Vanessa hesitated. Her reflection in the glass looked almost like a stranger. The expensive gown, the flawless makeup. A perfect disguise for a broken soul. She inserted the flash drive into the main terminal. The screen came alive. Lines of code flashed rapidly, transferring data, moving millions in seconds. She whispered to herself, just a few more minutes. But something strange happened. The progress bar froze at 98%. Then a soft voice spoke behind her. "Why, Vanessa?" She spun around. Darius stood at the door, calm, composed, yet heartbreak in his eyes deep enough to silence the room. Her lips trembled. "Darius, He stepped closer, his voice quiet. "I gave you everything. My trust, my name, my world. And you gave me this?" She swallowed hard, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't mean... It wasn't supposed to..." He glanced at the flashing monitor. "It wasn't supposed to what? Hurt me? Destroy me? Make me watch the woman I love turn into a stranger?" Her knees weakened. "You don't understand. You took everything from people like us. My family lost everything." He cut her off, shaking his head. "I didn't take anything from you, Vanessa. I spent my life trying to rebuild what others destroyed. The projects you think I took were from companies like Ethan's, predatory, manipulative." Her world tilted. The room spun. "No," she whispered. "Ethan said..." Darius's voice hardened. "Ethan lied. He used you the same way you used me." The truth unfolds. Vanessa's body trembled. "No, I didn't know. I thought..." He stepped forward slowly, sorrow etched into every word. "You thought you were hurting a monster. But you became one instead." The words hit harder than any scream. "I loved you," she whispered, voice cracking. "I still do. Then why?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Because love doesn't feed the hungry, Darius. Love doesn't pay for therapy for a mother who can't forget her home being taken. I thought if I got what Ethan promised, I could finally fix everything." He looked at her for a long moment. The girl he once believed was his peace. Then he sighed softly. "You could have just asked me for help." That broke her completely. She sank to her knees, sobbing, clutching the hem of her gown. The collapse, suddenly, security burst into the room, responding to the system alert. Darius raised his hand. "Stand down." The guards froze. He turned back to Vanessa, still trembling. "I'm not pressing charges," he said quietly. "Not tonight." She stared at him through tears. "Why?" "Because revenge ends with Ethan," he said. "Not with you." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Return what you took, then disappear from my life. If I see your name connected to his again, mercy ends." Then he walked away. The final confrontation. Outside the building, rain began to fall, a slow, cleansing drizzle that turned into a storm. Vanessa stumbled out minutes later, soaked and shaking. She dialed Ethan's number with trembling hands. When he answered, she screamed, "You lied to me! You said Darius stole from us." Ethan laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, don't tell me you're catching feelings for your mark. You used me." He chuckled. "Of course I did. Did you really think I'd let you keep a cent? Send the drive, or I'll make sure every headline calls you the thief." Her face went pale. "Ethan, please." But the line went dead. She stared at the phone, lightning flashing behind her. For a long moment she stood still, drenched, heartbroken, destroyed. Then she looked up, determination cutting through her tears. "No," she whispered. "Not anymore." Redemption in the storm. The next morning, Ethan Garrison's name trended worldwide. Every account linked to him was frozen. Every hidden transfer was traced. Every fraudulent deal exposed. And at the center of it all was one anonymous email to federal investigators, sent from Vanessa's encrypted address. Inside the email was everything. Evidence of Ethan's crimes, his offshore accounts, recordings of his calls, and the flash drive's full contents. Darius received a copy. No name, no signature. Just a message. I'm sorry. I hope you build something beautiful with what I broke. A silent goodbye weeks later, Darius sat in his office overlooking the city. On his desk sat a simple envelope. No return address, no name. Inside, a necklace, a small silver pendant he had once given Vanessa on her birthday. And a note. Forgive me when you can. I'm learning who I am without the lies. He closed his eyes, pain mixing with peace. He didn't know where she was, and maybe he never would. But for the first time in months, he whispered a quiet prayer for her. The turn in a distant coastal town. Vanessa worked in a shelter for women escaping manipulation and exploitation, the same kind she once caused. Every night, she'd stare at the ocean and think about the man who saw good in her, even when she couldn't see it herself. And somewhere across the sea, Darius began a new foundation, the Cole Promise, built to educate and empower those who had been deceived. Just like her, their paths never crossed again. But in two hearts scarred by betrayal, forgiveness lived quietly, like a light that refused to go out. 6 months had passed since that stormy night. The scandal that should have ruined Darius Cole had only reshaped him. The media spun hundreds of versions. The billionaire betrayed. The heiress who hacked love. Corporate Romeo and Juliet. But behind those headlines, something extraordinary was happening. Darius wasn't focused on revenge. He was rebuilding lives. Instead of hiding behind wealth or lawyers, he opened a foundation, the Cole Promise. A non-profit dedicated to helping women and youth who'd been manipulated, blackmailed, or driven into financial traps by greed. It was his way of transforming pain into power. Every day, his office buzzed with new volunteers. And though he smiled more often now, those close to him knew there were still moments, quiet ones, when he looked out the window and his eyes softened with a question he'd never say aloud. Where are you now, Vanessa? Vanessa's new beginning 1,000 miles away, in a small coastal town with red clay roads and salt-heavy air. Vanessa Myers had changed her name. She was now simply Nessa Cole. She worked at Haven Outreach, a shelter for women escaping manipulation and abuse. She didn't earn much, but every dollar was honest. Every act came from her heart, something she hadn't been able to say for years. She slept on a simple bed, ate from tin plates, and spent her nights reading self-help books under a flickering bulb. But peace, that fragile, quiet thing, had begun to return to her. And yet, some nights she woke up in tears, remembering Darius's eyes the night he found her in the office. Not angry, but heartbroken. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't a door he could open for her. It was one she had to build herself. A letter. Never sent. One rainy afternoon, Nessa sat at her small wooden desk and began writing a letter. Dear Darius, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe it's better if my words never reach you. You once told me that love without truth is a cage. You were right. I lived in one for years, built by lies I thought were survival. But you broke that cage open. You showed me that there's strength in kindness, and that trust isn't foolishness, it's courage. I'm learning now and to be better, to do better. If you ever think of me, I hope it's not with anger, but with the quiet understanding that the woman who hurt you finally learned what love means. Always, V. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into an envelope. No address. Just her initials. Then she placed it in a glass bottle and carried it to the shore. As the sunset painted the sky gold and crimson, she tossed the bottle into the sea. The tide carried it away, glinting briefly before it vanished beyond the waves. For the first time in years, her heart felt light. The Gala of Forgiveness. That same evening, in New York City, Darius was attending another gala, this one for the Cole Promise's 1-year anniversary. He stood before the crowd, confident but quieter, wiser. "Tonight," he began, "I want to dedicate this event to second chances. Because we all fail, we all betray something. Trust, love, ourselves. But redemption isn't about forgetting the past. It's about transforming it." The room fell silent. Then he added softly, "Someone once taught me that even broken people can be the bridge others walk across to reach light. That's who we're building this foundation for, those who need light after loss." The audience erupted in applause, many unaware of the personal ache behind those words. But in the front row, a woman wiped her tears. She recognized that pain. She too had loved and lost. An unexpected encounter. A few weeks later, Darius visited a remote town to inspect a rural education center funded by his foundation. He arrived quietly, without press or attention. As he walked through the dusty path toward the center, he noticed a group of women painting the walls with bright blue and yellow flowers. Among them was one who moved differently, slow, deliberate, graceful. When she turned, the world seemed to stop. It was her, Vanessa. Their eyes met. And for a moment, neither spoke. She froze, paintbrush in hand, heartbeat echoing in her ears. Darius didn't speak either. He just looked at her, not with anger, not with pity, but with something even deeper. Recognition. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't think you'd ever—" He interrupted softly. "I wasn't looking for you. I was following my work." Silence hung between them. Then he smiled faintly. "I guess we both found purpose in the wreckage." Her eyes shimmered. "I'm not the woman I was, Darius." "I know," he said. "You became the woman you were meant to be." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry," he nodded gently. "I forgave you long before today." And with that, something inside both of them healed, not into romance, not into reunion, but into peace. The final scene. That night, the sky stretched wide over the sea. Darius stood outside the small shelter, watching the horizon. Vanessa approached quietly, handing him a mug of tea. They stood side by side in silence, the waves whispering like old memories. She said softly, "Do you ever wonder what love really is?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe it's not about possession or promises," he said. "Maybe it's about forgiveness, the kind that doesn't demand anything back." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe, for the first time, we both finally loved right." He turned to her and nodded. "Maybe we did." The camera of life seemed to pull back slowly, showing the two of them standing under a soft, starlit sky. No dramatic reunion, no fairy tale ending, just peace. Two souls redeemed by truth. Epilogue months later. Vanessa's shelter received a large anonymous donation, enough to expand its reach across 3 more towns. The note attached read, "For those who lost their way, but found the courage to return home." DC Vanessa placed the letter on her desk and smiled through tears. Some stories don't end in love. Some end in forgiveness, and that's enough. True love isn't blind. It sees every flaw and still chooses compassion. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into wisdom. In the weeks that followed Vanessa's exposure, the world around Darius shifted from glamour to ghostly quiet. His name trended across every social media platform, not for success this time, but for scandal. The billionaire betrayed. News channels replayed footage of the party, the confrontation, and Vanessa's face as the truth came out. Investors withdrew, tabloids feasted, and former friends whispered. But through it all, Darius didn't retaliate. He didn't sue, didn't destroy her life, didn't speak a word to the media. He simply disappeared from the public eye. Inside his penthouse overlooking the city, he sat for hours in darkness, reflecting. Not about the money he lost, but about the trust he had given so purely to someone who wore love like a disguise. His grandmother once told him, "A good heart in a cruel world is a dangerous gift." Now he understood. Vanessa's world crumbled faster than she could rebuild it. The company that had once bowed to her influence now erased her name. Friends she manipulated vanished. Her lavish apartment, gone. Her designer clothes, sold, but more painful than poverty was the silence. No one called her name anymore. And when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see beauty or victory. She saw the hollowness of someone who traded love for power and lost both. She tried to reach Darius, wrote him letters, sent emails, even showed up outside his company's glass building once, only to see his security politely refuse her entry. In that moment, she realized forgiveness wasn't owed. It had to be earned. Months turned to a year. Darius had rebuilt, but differently this time. He shifted focus from luxury tech to human innovation. His new foundation, the Cole Promise, funded young entrepreneurs from poor backgrounds, especially those who had faced betrayal or hardship. His board members were confused. Why charity? Why this cause? He only said, because no one should be punished for loving the wrong person. We all deserve a second chance to rebuild, like I did. Meanwhile, in a quiet part of Georgia, Vanessa worked at a local youth shelter. She lived simply, her only jewelry a bracelet made by one of the kids she helped feed. One evening, while sorting donations, she found a news clipping in a box. Cole Promise opens new branch in Atlanta. Her hands trembled. His face smiled from the photo, older, calmer, kinder. That night, she wrote him one last time. Dear Darius, you were the one person I couldn't fool, because you saw me when I didn't even see myself. You gave me love and I gave you lies. You offered me trust and I offered you fear. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope you know that your kindness saved me from becoming the monster I almost became. Every time I help a child smile, I remember what you taught me. That love isn't ownership. It's responsibility. If you ever read this, know that I'm finally proud of the woman I've become. You did that. Vanessa, she mailed it to his foundation's address, never expecting a reply. 3 months later, fate intervened. During an event for the foundation's new community center, Vanessa was among the volunteers invited to attend. She didn't know Darius would be there. When he entered, tall, composed, wearing the same calm smile, the crowd rose in applause. He spoke about rebuilding, about grace, about the strength of rising after heartbreak. His words were about business, but his eyes, when they found hers across the room, told a deeper story. After the ceremony, she approached slowly, heart pounding. Darius, she whispered. He looked at her, not as a man betrayed, but as someone who'd healed. Vanessa, he said softly, I got your letter. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't expect... I know, he interrupted gently. Forgiveness isn't given to erase the past. It's given to free the future. Her lip quivered. I hurt you so much, he smiled faintly. And yet here you are, helping others heal. That's how I know I didn't love in vain. They walked together outside as the evening wind carried the scent of rain. No romantic music, no promises of reunion, just silence and the quiet understanding that sometimes love is meant to teach, not to last. Before parting, Darius said, I hope your heart never forgets what it learned. Vanessa replied softly, It never will. She turned and walked away, free for the first time. He watched her go, at peace at last. A year later, the foundation unveiled a new program for rehabilitated women. At the entrance stood a large oak tree with a plaque that read, Planted by the Cole Promise Foundation, in honor of those who found light after lies. Dedicated to VM, for teaching us that brokenness can bloom again. Beneath it, children played, women laughed, and Darius smiled quietly, finally home in his own heart. And love is not destroyed by betrayal, it is refined by truth.